We live in an age of remakes, reboots, revamps, and reinterpretations of old ideas. So today, we're gonna rewind and take a look at a character I created when I was a kid and see if we can't reimagine it. Greetings, people of the internet. I'm Scott with Serkworks Art Labs. Welcome, mad creators, to the underground laboratory where we create robots, aliens, zombies, and other imminent threats to humanity. And I've been doing that type of thing for a while, ever since I was a little kid. And surprisingly, I have some of my old drawings that every once in a while I'll kind of dive into just for nostalgia's sake. And I was doing that the other day, and I remembered a character I created called Cyberduck, and it was sort of a, basically kind of a rip-off of I don't know what was popular at the time, like Howard the Duck or Destroyer Duck. Those type of comics were kind of big, and they influenced this character. It was kind of a rip-off, but instead I kind of made him sort of a cyborg duck. So I was looking through some of these old comics, old drawings of this character, and I started to think, is there anything there? Is there anything that I can mine from this character, maybe bring him into the modern age? I don't know, but you know, I think it's worth a try. So anyway, so let me kind of real quick kind of go in and show you some of this stuff. Now, I used to draw pretty light when I was a kid, son. This one's actually in ink. So this is I think this might have been the first interpretation of this comic book that I did, Cyberduck. And I guess he was a detective or something, or some kind of a private eye. And, you know, half duck, half robot type of thing. Here you can see a little bit of his origin. I guess, you know, like many ducks, he started off as an egg. I don't remember the exact, you know, I redid this a couple times, but this is sort of him introducing himself. He's wearing a trench coat here, so you can't really see. And this is, again, this is old. I was a little kid, probably 10 years old or something when I was drawing this kind of stuff. But this character, I'm kind of surprised that I kind of forgot about it, because this character, I kept redoing this character so many times. Here's another interpretation. I don't know, I did this, I don't know if you can see that. He's kind of in a plane, but now he's dressed up in like floaties and stuff, jumping out of a plane. I don't know what that's all about. And then, so let's see. So here's, I guess, another version. And this is sort of the same comic, but I redid it. I don't know, like I said, I drew really light back in those days, but I do remember in this story, and I redid the story a number of times, but I remember at the end of every story, he gets blown up. So there's this guy shows up and just kind of blows him up. So anyway, and I'm pretty sure he just gets rebuilt because he's a robot, or half robot, half duck. Now, the other thing was, and I didn't stop there, I kind of spin it off, because this is when Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were popular. So, based on the Cyberduck concept, I also came up with this here, juvenile, solar-powered, cybernetic samurai ducklings. Now, this is a time where, like I said, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were big in comics. This is probably before they had breached, like, the, you know, blown out of the stratosphere with their cartoons and become what they are today. They started off as just comics, but there were a lot of other comic book companies trying to piggyback off the success of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and creating their own. There was something adolescent hamsters. I mean, I've got a bunch of these, so I wanted to do my own. So anyway, this is kind of taking my Cyberduck character and then, you know, making, of course, 4 of them. There's the different characters right there, you know. And I thought I was so clever because mine didn't all look the same. I tried to make them a little different, because back in those days, even the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles had the same headband, so they all look very similar. The only way you could tell them apart is their weapons. But so here's, again, but I guess I did a complete story with this one too as well. This one I actually sort of inked and everything. But yeah, so I had, you know, I redid this a number of times, even after I graduated high school. And this you're not going to be able to see. It's so light. I don't know why I drew so light back in those days. This is before I started working in Blue Line. But it's kind of boring in the beginning. Just a bunch of people in boardrooms talking. I don't know why they decided they had to build this thing. I think I have some pages that yeah, here. So I don't actually have any pictures of the Cyberduck character, but I actually laid vellum over these pages, and this is when I was just first learning how to ink with like a quill or a brush. So there's some pages here, they're like pretty bad. But you can kind of see here with the egg, this is, I kind of was trying to take this ridiculous concept and try to make it make sense with science. And I'm sure it doesn't make sense if I was to read through it, but I try to, you know, but you can kind of see, if you know me, I like to draw all these, just all kinds of technical stuff and machinery and all kinds of stuff. So you can kind of see some of that in here, even from an early age. There's another one. Oh man, the proportions and oh, this is so bad. These characters, you know, I think I spent a lot more time drawing the machinery than the people, so it took me a while to get a hang of proper anatomy and stuff like that. Not that I'm great at that either. So here's, looks like this is where he's getting blown up on this one. I don't know if you can see that. That's pretty light. But I do have, let's see, where's, yeah. And then one other page, you can kind of see, basically, I wish I just had a better rendering of this character so you can kind of see what he used to look like, because I was kind of surprised that, and none of them really looked the same. I wasn't trying to keep anything on model, so they would all be the same. And like I said, I redid this character a number of times, but this time I'm gonna take on this character from a new perspective. And I thought it might be a neat experiment to go into my process on that when I'm approaching something like this. If I'm taking an old drawing that I did as a kid and, you know, kind of figure out what worked about it, what didn't work, what changes I can make, and see if we can come up with something kind of interesting. So we're gonna do that today, so let's get into it. All right, so here we go. We're gonna, and first off the bat, I want to talk a little bit about the tools and everything, because as I mentioned before, when I used to draw these as a kid, I would just use a really light pencil, a really light touch, and unfortunately, it's hard for me to show stuff nowadays that I did as a kid. I can look at it myself, and you know, it was always the intention I would go over with ink, but I think I was worried that when I started off drawing, I would have a pretty heavy hand. And then it was really hard to erase, and you know, I was just working on copy paper most of the time back then, so I realized that maybe if I draw a little lighter, I wouldn't have that big of a problem erasing. So because of that, my stuff is real light. But now what I do is I'm just using the Prismacolor Color Erase pencils. I'm using green this time because as I go into this, and there's no particular reason why I'm using this color other than what I'm going to say. And you know, as far as I do want this character to have some green in him, so but a lot of times I'll use like a vermilion color, like a red or a blue, or sometimes purple, these different color pencils. And I don't really worry so much that the pencil lines shine through, at least for these sketches. Now, if I'm actually working on a comic, then I'm gonna use blue line. Nowadays, I'm doing a lot of that stuff digitally. But when I'm doing like traditional work, like a sketch, I always like to use color pencils, and I don't mind that those pencils show through the inks and things like that. And with this one, I will color it. But yeah, I like these pencils. They seem to go on pretty smooth. After I finally got out of the habit of drawing everything super light, I started moving on to non-photo blue pencils, and then from there, I don't know, I used those for a long time before I just started sketching with these color erase pencils. So anyway, because there's always people that want to know what kind of tools I'm using, so that's what I'm using for here. So as you can see, I sort of sketched out my basic idea for this character. Now I want to do some things differently. So first of all, I want to think about, when I'm redesigning a character, I want to take into consideration, I want to think about what works about this character. And honestly, I don't know that much really does work about this. There's been tons of other characters that were half like cyborg animals or whatever, I think. But with this one, and there's tons of other duck characters. There's, you know, back then, basically all the Disney ducks had their own, you know, comic books, Donald Duck, Scrooge McDuck, Huey, Dewey, and Louie. A lot of that, like I said, Howard the Duck was big, and then you know, the creators from Howard the Duck left Marvel and created Destroyer Duck. But you know, so there's a lot of that stuff. There's Daffy Duck. Now Daffy Duck's a little different in that he's like a black duck. You don't see so many like black ducks. In cartoons anyway, most of the ducks that I've seen are like white, and so I don't want to do just the straight white duck. So I'm gonna, you know, I've got a park by my house that has sort of, you know, it's got a pond and stuff like that, and there's ducks all the time, and most of those ducks aren't white. There's some, I guess there's some geese or something that are white, but not necessarily the ducks. I'm sure there are white ducks, but the ones I've seen are more like the, you know, the green coloring on the head and everything. So I thought, and you don't see that so much in cartoons for whatever reason. You don't see that. So I thought maybe that's something that I would add. So that's something I'm thinking about when I go into coloring. But as far as what I can salvage from the original, I like the fact that he's got the one cybernetic eye, the one cybernetic arm, and then, you know, just so it's not so, what's this term I'm searching for? So asymmetrical, where just one side of his body is just all cybernetic and the other half isn't. That might have been, I don't know if I did that on the first one or not. I think there was so anyway, his opposite leg I think I'll make cybernetic. So just, you know, if he's in some sort of explosion, who knows what kind of shrapnel hit him or whatever, or that, you know, destroyed whatever limbs or you know, appendages or whatever he had. So anyway, so I'm gonna kind of, but I think I'll try to, because now I'm way better than I used to be at drawing all those little detailed mechanical things like that. So this is fun to me. I guess that's the one thing about this character that I do like, is that he's got all these robot parts, and I always like drawing robots. So the other thing I want to do a little different is just the proportions, I guess, of this character, because if you look at a lot of those Duck characters, Howard the Duck, Huey, Dewey, and Louie, Donald Duck, all those guys, Daffy Duck, they're similar proportions to each other. I think Daffy may be a little taller, but their beaks, or their bills rather, not beaks, their bills are, you know, they're sort of squat and wide, whereas if you look at ducks in the wild, they have more of a longer bill. So that's something I'm going to do with this character. Now, in just the sketching, as you can see it now, it looks it does look different. It looks original, but for some reason, when you think of cartoon ducks, you've seen with that kind of squat bill. So I don't know if I'll pull this off, but I just don't want it to look like all those other characters. I want to put my own spin on it. I want, when you look at this character, for you not to say, oh, that's just Howard the Duck, but he's cybernetic like the other one looked like. So that's where I'm going to try to change some things around. So when you are redesigning your character, always think about what works and what you can change. And those are some things. And if it does seem a little derivative, like it seems similar to other characters you've created, or not you've created, but that other people have created as well. And you used to see this a lot, and especially with Image Comics when they first came out, there was a lot of their characters were super derivative of other characters you saw in Marvel, and even Marvel and DC before that. They each had their own, you know, Superman type character. They each had their own whatever it is. So when the artist left, you know, Marvel to do when those, is it 6 or 7 artists? I don't know how many Image founders were, but whatever. A lot of their characters were pretty derivative of the characters that they were working at in Marvel, which makes sense from a marketing standpoint because people love them drawing those other characters, so they want something similar but different. So but you look at, so for instance, like the Wolverine type character. I'm trying to think. So when Jim Lee, he had his Wolverine type character, I think his name was Warblade, but he did something a little bit original where he would take not just the regular claws, but at that time another really popular movie was The Terminator, where, you know, T2, where he had sort of that liquid metal, and he could form, you know, stabbing weapons and things like that. So Jim Lee created his, you know, version of Wolverine, but combined it with that T2 thing where it was kind of, the claws could take their own shapes and grow and do all that kind of stuff, and it was more like a liquid metal type thing. So he took two things that were popular and kind of combined them. So that's one thing you can do. You know, and then there's some of the other characters. I think every single Image founder has, with the exception of maybe Todd McFarlane and Eric Larson, had their claw type characters. So there's a lot of that. So when you are dealing with characters that are sort of derivative, or there's other characters like that, try to think at least something original you can spin on it, so they're just not a carbon copy of something else. And that doesn't have to be a massive, you know, departure, because sometimes those characters, you know, they're popular for a reason, so you can borrow a little bit from those, but try to put your own spin. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do with this. There are other cybernetic, you know, characters, especially combined with animals, I think. I'm trying to think now. I mean, at the time it seemed like there were a lot of them. I don't know. Maybe not. Now that there's a lot of duck characters, there's so many of them. I mean, like Darkwing Duck, and I mean Disney just has a whole line of duck characters. So I just want to separate them a little bit. So anyway, now I'm kind of getting into you know, doing some inking and everything, and this is where when I'm penciling mechanical like gadgets and gizmos and all that kind of stuff. Gizmo is another. Was it Gizmo? Wasn't there a duck in the Duckverse called Gizmo? I think so. I think he was the inventor in DuckTales. I could be thinking of somebody else. Anyway, but so it's been a while since I've seen that. But anyway, so a lot of that I'll just kind of do rough sketches, and then it's really that when I get into doing the inking is when I put in a lot of that detail and all the wires and things like that, because I can kind of, because it doesn't have to resemble anything from reality. I'm using my own imagination, so that's one of those things where I'm not so worried about, you know, oh, I better make sure I draw it correct in pencil first before I go over it in ink, because I could mess it up. With this, it's kind of hard to mess up because it could be anything you want. Now, I don't know if you could see from some of the samples I shown, but he had in the original, my original sketch, he had sort of a screen on his chest. I think in one of them, some of the versions is a little off to the side over by where I guess his heart would be or whatever. But I thought maybe put that screen kind of smack dab in the center, and I want it to be sort of like I don't know what you call those heart monitors or whatever, kind of where you know, it's got that line that kind of dips up and everything that shows the vitals and everything like that. So I want to have that, and I'll probably, when I get to coloring, as we'll see, I'll probably incorporate green in that. And I don't know if I have any color versions of the old Cyberduck that I did, but I always thought that would be green. So that's one thing, and that'll kind of go along when I do some of the coloring and add some of the green flourishes, I guess, or just color schemes that I'm going to do when I actually do that. Now, so again, now you can kind of see where I've got one, and I think I flipped it around. I think it might have been the opposite before, or it may all been on one side, I don't remember. But I'm sort of flipping it around where he's got the realistic sort of web feet on one side, and then the you know, the mechanical web feet. And the thing that's so ridiculous about this concept that I realized that I didn't as a kid, and even like I said, I tried to, when I did it for like the third time after I graduated high school, that was one of the comics I was working on. Never finished inking it or anything, but I was really trying to say, how can I take this ridiculous concept and try to make it seem plausible? And I don't think I pulled that off. But so anytime I look at this character, it's like, why would somebody spend the time to spend, you know, because like the $6 million man, and obviously with inflation that'd be way more, but imagine if it was $6 million to take a duck and save it and add cybernetic. Why would anyone do that? I have no idea. But anyway, but it's kind of fun, and this started from that kid logic that it just like, why not? You know, why not have a duck? Why wouldn't they try to save it and maybe I don't know. Well, I think part of it was whatever happened, he did become intelligent. That must have been the main thing. So it wasn't just a regular duck. He, you know, whatever experiment happened prior to, you know, going haywire, he gained some sort of intelligence. So maybe they wanted to keep him alive to study him more and figure out, you know, maybe on the next round or whatever they could make him, you know, I don't know. But it's a ridiculous idea, but sometimes it's just fun to do things like this that just make zero sense. But anyway, so yeah, it's fun. And yeah, so far I am kind of digging this. I most likely I'll never do anything really with this character. I can't imagine creating a story around it or anything, but it is fun to take something like this and redesign it. And again, work with some different proportions. I think if you look at this, you can tell it doesn't look like Donald Duck. It doesn't necessarily look like a Daffy Duck, despite the fact that it's, I mean, don't even take into consideration that it's half robot. I think if I didn't do all the robots thing, I think still the proportions would look a little bit different. So I am liking that. I'm curious how it would look like animated. You know, sometimes maybe there's a reason why they did things, you know, all the bills similar on some of these cartoon ducks. I don't know, but it's kind of a style that somebody created, whether I would guess that it's probably, you know, but you know what? Now that I think about it, and it may have just become a shorthand, because I'm thinking back to early drawings of Donald Duck, and I did think at the early drawings he had a longer bill, and then for whatever reason, as they kept drawing him, that bill kind of got shorter and stubbier. And maybe, you know what it probably is, I would imagine, now that I think about it, as they, I'm sure as they continue to, you know, animate this character, to give him somewhat human expressions and everything, they're probably fighting against that long bill. So that probably makes a lot of sense as to why they've maybe shortened that, and so you can get a little more of a smile, and you can do a little more, you know, kind of human mouth movements than you could if he had like a longer bill. And I can look at this drawing right now that I'm doing, and I can see how, you know, there may be some limitations if this was to be animated. So I don't know, but anyway, so now I'm getting into some of the color. With this one, I'm just going to start with all the mechanical stuff. And a lot of times you can just start with grays when you're working with, and these are Copic markers, or I'm going to use some Copic, and then I've also got the Hoo Hoo Hoo, which are another brand that came out with the brush tip markers, a lot less expensive. But yeah, so I'm just going to go through. I usually start with grays. I'll start from light to dark, and you could even go shade the whole thing in, even the parts that are going to be other colors other than gray. With this one, I think I'm just doing most of the mechanical stuff now, and then as I go in, I'll start adding some more of the other colors. But this is starting to pop it up now. You can see a little. It's when you start doing this and adding those dimensions, or adding that shading, you can kind of see it becomes a little three-dimensional. You can kind of see the curves a little more. You see some of the highlights hitting it, and I'm starting to like it. And again, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to separate this character from all of these other ducks that are out there. All these white ducks, and go with more of a green color scheme. And some of those ducks have that collar, as you can see. I kind of left that. But you know, these brown, you know, this duck. So with this duck, I'm going to do kind of a color scheme of a green, brown, and white, I think, and then just the standard sort of yellow bill. But it's going to be, now this bill might be, it never was before, but I think the bill is probably going to be at least partially mechanical, although I don't want it to be metal. I want it to, like, it's got sort of an alloy sort of metallic gold or yellow tint to it. So you can see where I drew some of the little grooves there, and maybe a little plate, just because most of the other stuff is all this metal color, you know, chrome color, whereas I wanted the bill to be metal, or partially metal anyway, and then but still have but not be metal like the rest of it. So that's what I'm doing there. You can see where I kind of filled in the little monitor on the chest like I was talking about. And now I'm getting into, you know, again, trying to separate them from those other ducks by adding some different color schemes with the browns, the greens, and I like kind of the tufts of feathers. Every once in a while you see these ducks that have these weird, you know, feathers on their head. Like I was jogging around, and there was a duck at one of the parks, and it had almost looked like that Beethoven hair. Like it was just this white hair sticking up, feathers rather, just sticking up all over the place. So that sort of inspired me with that. Even though in the original drawing, I think he just had some kind of, his feather was sticking up a little bit, but not to this extent. But yeah, I mean, it's starting to come together a little bit now. Hopefully you can see where I'm going with this. Hopefully you can see the improvement. I just wish I had some better drawings that I could show you a side-by-side, but all those old drawings I drew before were kind of either really light, or they just weren't very, or just a weird angle, or because I don't think I ever did like a model sheet of that character. I mean, but you did see like the different versions of all the cybernetic samurai duckling ones that I did, and you can kind of see how I did character designs of those. That's probably the closest I'm going to get. So hopefully you can kind of see with that. So I don't have a side-by-side to show you, but based on the stuff I showed you before, and just, I just kind of wanted to take you through my process with this so you can see, what I'm thinking about, think of what works, think about what you can change, and try to put a new spin on something like this. And I'm the visual design, I'm happy with it. Like I said, I don't think I can do anything with this as far as a story or anything, but it's always fun to, to go back through your archives or old drawings that you did and see what you can do with them. Okay, here it is. This is the finished artwork for my new revamped Cyberduck. I like kind of the color scheme. I think it's a little different from some of the other duck characters out there, but I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to do anything with them, but I definitely do like this version a lot better. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything story-wise that's good with this character or what, but it is kind of a fun experiment to take old characters that you have and see if you can put a new spin on them. So let me know, do you guys have characters you created as a kid, or even if you are a kid, characters maybe you created a year or so ago? Because we're constantly improving, we're constantly getting better, so it's always a good idea to go back and look at some of your old artwork and see if you take that same idea and what you could do for it now with a few either years or days or months or whatever has passed. You're constantly improving if you're drawing like you should be, and you're constantly getting better. So there's a pretty good chance that you'll come up with something a lot better when you take a stab at taking some of your old artwork and keep putting a new spin on it. So let me know if there's anything like that that you've got in the past that you have revamped or reinterpreted, or if there's something that you want to do. Let me know in the comments section. I'll see you guys later. That is all. Hey, thanks for watching. If you like what you saw and you want to see more, hit that subscribe button. Also, you can follow me at Serkworks on social media, and now you can support the work that I do on Patreon. If you like making comics, then go to Serkworks.com and pick up the Comic Maker Starter Kit. It's packed full of fonts, brushes, templates, and more, and best of all, it's totally free.